with, I think a lot of people is it's almost construed as backward.
Vince Gill had it all, a golden voice that soared through radio waves and brought 21 #1 hits and 22 Grammy Awards to his name. But in the year 2000, a single decision split his fan base in half. He married Amy Grant, the reigning queen of Christian pop music, and the fallout was immediate. Both Gill and Grant had divorced their spouses shortly beforehand. Many in the Christian community saw it not as love, but as sin. Radio stations boycotted their music. Protesters with handmade signs accused them of adultery. And yet, through it all, Vince never backed down. He stood by his choices, just like he always had, through pain, scrutiny, and storms that would have broken most others. Vince Gill was born on April 12, 1957, in Norman, Oklahoma. His childhood home was a unique mix of law and bluegrass. His father was a federal judge, but also an exceptional musician who could play the banjo, guitar, and harmonica with the ease of a seasoned professional. After long days in the courtroom, Judge Gill would sit on the porch with Vince's mother, Giren, playing music that drifted through the halls and spilled into the streets. Vince often lay awake at night, listening to the melodies his parents made together. Those nights, an odd mix of legal seriousness and musical joy, left a permanent imprint on his soul. Yet, life wasn't easy for the boy with music in his blood. Vince was born with a condition that made his eyes misaligned. It wasn't just a cosmetic issue. He needed 2 painful surgeries to partially correct it. Even afterward, his left eye would drift when he was tired or emotional. The teasing from classmates was relentless, and it cut deep. Vince started wearing glasses not just to improve his sight, but to mask the part of himself that made him feel broken. Rather than lash out, he turned inward, avoiding social interaction and finding refuge in music. His guitar became his sanctuary. He wasn't escaping the world, he was building a new one. At the age of 10, tragedy struck the Gill family. Vince's half-brother Bob was involved in a devastating car accident on a rainy highway near Oklahoma City. Once a bright student and promising athlete, Bob sustained such severe brain damage that he couldn't remember names. He would require full-time care for over 25 years. Judge Gill had to take on extra legal work just to pay the mounting medical bills, and the strain eventually cracked his marriage. When Bob passed away in 1993 from a heart attack, the trauma of that loss stayed with Vince forever. He later revealed that his songs, the ones that quietly shatter listeners in their cars, were born from that deep, relentless grief. Music, for Vince, was more than a passion. It was purpose. At 5 years old, while visiting his grandmother, he picked up an old acoustic guitar and started trying to play Old Shep. In just 30 minutes, with no lessons, he figured out the chords and began singing. His grandmother was stunned and immediately called his parents, insisting that she'd just witnessed something rare. By the time he turned 10, the family scraped together enough money to buy him a Gibson ES-335 electric guitar. It cost almost $800 in 1967, the equivalent of over $6,500 today. That guitar wasn't just a gift. It was a declaration. Vince wasn't just a kid playing music. He was a musician. Vince would retreat into the basement for 6 to 8 hours a day, practicing relentlessly. Family members recall sad, aching melodies floating through the house. His music teacher later said Vince had a sound that went far beyond his years, a kind of emotional depth that couldn't be taught. By high school, he had formed a bluegrass band called Mountain Smoke. Then came the unforgettable night of March 4th, 1976. Mountain Smoke opened for Kiss at the Oklahoma City Fairgrounds. The rock-loving crowd expected fire and leather, but got fiddles and banjos instead. They booed, threw cups, even shoes. Vince, enraged, flipped the crowd off, mooned them, and stormed off stage. The band broke up shortly after, but Vince didn't quit. He moved to Kentucky and joined the Bluegrass Alliance, then Boone Creek, where he played alongside a young Ricky Skaggs. Together, they pioneered a fresh fusion of traditional bluegrass with modern energy. Their only album from 1977 became a cult classic. Later that year, Vince moved to Los Angeles and joined Sundance, a band led by fiddle legend Byron Berlin. The bar was high. Berlin had played with Bill Monroe and the Flying Burrito Brothers, but Vince met the challenge. He played the Palomino Club, an iconic venue, and found himself sharing the stage with the likes of Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt. Just a year after being booed off stage, he was rubbing elbows with Grammy-winning artists. In 1978, Pure Prairie League was in crisis. Their lead singer had left, and the band, now devoid of original members, was desperate to survive. They remembered Vince, who had opened for them back in 1976. This time, he said yes to joining. At just 21 years old, Vince became their frontman, playing every stringed instrument they threw at him. In 1980, the band released Firin' Up, which included their biggest hit ever, Let Me Love You Tonight. The song reached number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, carried entirely by Vince's voice. He also wrote 5 more tracks for the album, helping to shift the band's sound toward a more polished country pop fusion. But success didn't last. By 1981, their record label went bankrupt, sales dropped, and the band lost their momentum. Vince left in early 1982. Around this time, he met Janice Oliver from the duo Sweethearts of the Rodeo. They married in 1980 and welcomed a daughter, Jennifer, in 1982. Confident in his solo potential, Vince declined an invitation to join Rodney Crowell's band, the Cherry Bombs. But as the year dragged on, his solo efforts stalled. Songs didn't chart. Gigs dried up. Eventually, he called Crowell back and joined the band. A decision that changed everything. The Cherry Bombs weren't just any band. They featured future Nashville titans like Tony Brown and Emery Gordy Jr. Touring with them, Vince improved his guitar skills, stage presence, and industry connections. In 1983, he moved his family to Nashville. Money was tight. They lived in a small rental house, and Vince took any gig he could. He played guitar for Roseanne Cash, who was married to Crowell at the time. Those early Nashville years were a masterclass in survival. Vince wasn't chasing fame anymore. He was building something deeper, staying power. By 1984, Tony Brown had become head of A&R at RCA Records. He believed in Vince and pushed hard to get him signed. It worked. Vince released his debut EP Turn Me Loose in February 1984. 3 tracks hit the top 40, with Victim of Life's Circumstances reaching number 34. That same year, Vince was named the Academy of Country Music's top new male vocalist, but chart-topping fame still eluded him. His 1985 album The Things That Matter was solid, but didn't break through. Between 1984 and 1988, he remained just under the radar. Then, in 1989, everything changed. At 32 years old, Vince was at a crossroads. RCA didn't know what to do with him, but Tony Brown, now at MCA Records, offered him a second chance. Vince released When I Call Your Name, a genre-blending album that fused country, pop, rock, and bluegrass. The title track became his breakout hit, peaking at number 2 on the Billboard Country chart. It won CMA's Single of the Year in 1990 and Vince's first Grammy in 1991. Suddenly, Vince wasn't just respected, he was a star. From 1992 to 1994, Vince Gill delivered 4 consecutive #1 hits. I Still Believe in You, Don't Let Our Love Start Slipping Away, One More Last Chance, and Trying to Get Over You. These weren't just chart toppers, they were emotional landmarks that helped define an entire era of country music. His voice, effortlessly smooth and achingly sincere, became synonymous with the genre's golden age. Whether you were in a truck driving down a back road, sitting at a kitchen table nursing a heartbreak, or slow dancing under dim bar lights, chances are Vince's voice was playing in the background. But Vince wasn't just a hitmaker, he was a collaborator. During this era, he became one of the most sought-after session musicians and duet partners in Nashville. Artists like Reba McEntire tapped him not just for his vocal harmonies, but for the emotional texture he brought to every track. Their collaboration on Oklahoma Swing wasn't just a song. It was a masterclass in how traditional country and modern production could blend seamlessly. His work with Emmylou Harris on her album Bluebird brought a tenderness and richness that elevated the entire record. And with Rosanne Cash, he helped shape the introspective, haunting tones of her 1990 album Interiors, further proving his range. Perhaps most surprising was his genre-crossing turn with blues rock legend Bonnie Raitt on her 1991 album Luck of the Draw. Vince's ability to pivot from country to blues, from twang to soul, made him not just versatile, but essential. Producers knew it, artists knew it, and fans felt it, even if they couldn't always name it. This period also marked a rare alignment of critical acclaim and commercial success. Vince was packing out arenas, winning major awards, and still finding time to lend his voice to others. In an industry where ego often takes center stage, Vince was known for his humility. He didn't just show up to sing, he showed up to serve the song. And that ethos is what made him more than a star. It made him indispensable.
By the mid-90s, Vince Gill wasn't just a fixture in country music. He was its standard. A voice that didn't just rise above the noise, but gave it meaning. In 1998, Vince released The Key, an album raw with emotion. It was his most personal work to date, written in the aftermath of his 17-year marriage to Janice Oliver ending. Songs like Kindly Keep It Country and The Key to Life peeled back the layers of his public persona and showed the man underneath, heartbroken, reflective, and honest. Then came the storm. In 2000, Vince married Amy Grant. Fans of both stars were shocked. Grant had just finalized her divorce from Christian artist Gary Chapman in 1999. Vince had split from Janice in 1998. Rumors swirled that their romance had begun years earlier. For some fans, especially those in Christian circles, it felt like betrayal. Amy Grant, once considered a beacon of wholesome, faith-based music, was now labeled an adulteress. Her songs were pulled from church playlists. Vince's shows were met with protests. The backlash was brutal. In 2013, the ghosts of that scandal returned when the Westboro Baptist Church picketed one of Vince's shows. Most celebrities would have ignored the hate. Vince didn't. He walked directly up to them. Calmly, he told them, "You guys don't have any grace." The video went viral, and Vince's refusal to let hate win earned him newfound respect. But life had more trials in store. In 2020, Vince and Amy went to a cardiologist for what was supposed to be a routine visit. Instead, both were flagged for further testing. Vince was diagnosed with PAPVR, a rare heart defect affecting less than 1% of the people. For decades, his heart had worked overtime due to misrouted blood flow. It could have killed him. Weeks later, both he and Amy underwent open-heart surgery during the pandemic, when hospitals barred visitors. They recovered apart, in loneliness and silence. In 2022, tragedy struck again. Amy Grant, already a survivor of open-heart surgery just 2 years prior, faced another life-altering ordeal. While riding her bicycle near a golf course in Nashville, she hit a pothole and was thrown off her bike, striking the pavement with force. She was knocked unconscious for 10 agonizing minutes. Emergency responders rushed to the scene and quickly transported her to the hospital. There, doctors confirmed what Vince feared most. Amy had sustained a traumatic brain injury. The woman known for her clarity, her control, and her angelic presence on stage suddenly found herself unable to remember basic conversations and daily routines. But the challenges didn't stop there. During the post-accident evaluations, doctors found a cyst growing dangerously near her vocal cords. The diagnosis was serious enough to require a 5-hour surgery, one that carried the risk of permanently damaging her signature voice, the very sound that had earned her 6 Grammy Awards and the hearts of millions. After surgery, Amy's voice changed. She could no longer sing with the same resonance. Her balance was affected. She said she often felt
drunk, even while completely sober, unable to walk straight or control her body the way she used to. Through it all, Vince never left her side. He became her caretaker, her steady hand, and her source of comfort during sleepless nights and therapy sessions. While some might have seen it as an unwelcome detour from his career, Vince saw it as sacred duty. In early 2023, he canceled 3 major concerts, not for rest or health reasons of his own, but because Amy needed him. He adjusted his life around hers, prioritizing her rehabilitation and emotional recovery above all else. Amy, ever resilient, began referring to herself as an old car that's been dented and repainted. She did so with humor and hope, trying to make light of a situation that nearly cost her everything. Her determination inspired many, but fans were equally moved by Vince's unwavering devotion. He wasn't just a Grammy-winning legend, he was a husband, showing the world what true love looks like when the spotlight fades and the only audience left is the one who matters most. Even outside of those crises, Vince had his own struggles. Polyps on his vocal cords made singing painful. Chronic back pain and arthritis slowed him down. He reduced touring, underwent therapy, changed his diet, whatever it took to keep going. Then came a cruel twist. In late 2022, a 75-year-old fan named Joyce left a simple comment on Vince's Instagram. Scammers reached out, impersonated him, and convinced her they were in love. Over a year, she sent them $450,000, her entire life savings. She believed they were married and would live together. Vince's team issued a warning, but the damage was done. In May 2025, Vince was hospitalized with severe kidney stones. He canceled shows in Birmingham and St. Louis. Fans flooded social media with prayers. He had always been there for them, and now they were there for him. But even after all of this, heartbreak, surgeries, scams, and setbacks, Vince Gill wasn't finished. In 2025, he launched his biggest summer tour in years, over 30 cities, a celebration of 50 years since leaving Oklahoma in 1975. It ended with 4 emotional nights at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, a place he'd performed at over 100 times, but never like this. He assembled an all-star 8-piece band featuring Nashville's best: Jim Moose Brown on keys, Wendy Moten with soaring vocals, Tom Bukovac on guitar, and more. These weren't just backup musicians, they were family. The chemistry was electric. They laughed, swapped solos, and lifted each other, just like Vince had always done for those around him. By 2025, Vince Gill wasn't just a country music icon, he was something bigger. A man who had survived fads, fought through health scares, stood by his wife, and sang through the pain. His voice, repaired and preserved, remained as powerful as ever. Because Vince Gill is more than the golden voice of country. He's its heart, its history, its humanity, and he's still believing. But beyond the awards and the standing ovations, what truly sets Vince apart is how he turned every obstacle into a bridge, connecting generations, genres, and hearts. Even in his 60s, and now into his late 60s, Vince became a mentor in the Nashville community. Young artists, wide-eyed and green, found in him a guiding light. He often opened his home studio to up-and-coming musicians, not for profit, but for passion. Pass it on, he'd say. To Vince, legacy wasn't just about records sold. It was about lifting others up so they could find their voice, too. He also took time to honor those who came before him. Vince was a staple at tribute concerts and memorials, performing songs by Merle Haggard, George Jones, and Glenn Campbell with a reverence few could match. His rendition of Go Rest High on That Mountain, originally written for Keith Whitley and later performed at George Jones's funeral, became an anthem of grief and healing across the country. Every time he sang it, you could hear decades of sorrow, love, and gratitude poured into each note. Even outside of music, Vince's presence was felt.
He quietly supported charities focused on children's health, musicians in recovery, and heart disease awareness, especially after his own surgery. He didn't chase headlines. He simply gave where he could, using his platform to shed light on those who needed it most. And when he stepped onto that Ryman stage in 2025 for his 50th anniversary tour, it wasn't just a concert. It was a homecoming, not just for Vince, but for everyone who had been moved by his journey. Fans who had followed him through heartbreaks, health scare, tears, and hard-won victories. People who'd grown up with his songs, who'd been comforted by his voice, who saw in him not a superstar, but someone real, someone human, someone still believing.